Welcome. We're going to pause as we welcome everyone into the webinar today. My name is Noemi Guevara, and I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement here at California State University, Long Beach. Thank you for joining us today. Before we start, I want to let you know that this session is being recorded and it will live on demand on our website at csulb.edu/alumni. Throughout our chat today, we encourage you to use our Q&A box located below to submit any questions for our guest speaker throughout the chat today. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for the chat, Christopher Gutierrez. Christopher is an alum of the Beach, graduated with a BA in Communications in 2014 and earned his teaching credential in Social Science in 2020. He has remained a connected volunteer here at the Beach, and we're very excited to have him on board today. Christopher, thank you for moderating the chat, and now I turn it over to you.
Noemi, thank you. Wayne, hello, good afternoon. It's very good to be here. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. Just as the title would suggest, achieving your wildest dreams. I'm really excited to have this conversation, Wayne, because I know you've kind of done it all. And so hopefully we'll get a chance to cover it. And what I really like about this conversation is I'm not sure if maybe this is your first time coming to one of these chats, or maybe you're a returnee, and I appreciate you being here. But there's something for everyone on this conversation, right? So we're going to cover CPA, we're going to cover city government, and also your radio gig, Wayne. So it's very exciting. So without further ado, before I give away all the details, Wayne, I'll go ahead and introduce you, and I'll read your bio here. So welcome everyone again. My name is Christopher Gutierrez. I'm a teacher, educator, and so I don't know all that much about the finance world, Wayne, so I'm very excited to get to know a little bit. But without further ado, Wayne Powell is a proud CSULB alumnus and marketing and accountancy alum from the College of Business. After graduating, Wayne worked his way up at the Big Five CPA firm and became the controller at one of his entertainment industry clients. He retired after 25 plus year career as a Senior VP of Finance and the Chief Financial Officer, the CFO. He then was elected and served 2 terms on the Manhattan Beach City Council, including 2 terms as mayor. He was also a select member of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and non-political delegation that met with President Barack Obama at the White House in 2015. After your career in city government, Wayne, you transitioned to become a radio talk show host, and 5 years later, enjoy hosting Powell to the People. Today's industry chat with Wayne. Everybody, welcome to Wayne Powell.
Thanks.
Wayne, very nice to be here again. Very excited to be with you. I was hoping just maybe because, again, you've had such an interesting career, maybe we can just kind of go chronologically along with it, and maybe we can reminisce and take it all the way back to Long Beach State. I know you mentioned we were talking beforehand, you haven't been on campus for a while.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the time when I can get back on campus. My favorite building, of course, is the Pyramid Building.
Walter Pyramid, yeah. So how about we go back and let's reminisce about your time as a student. Maybe share, what was it like? I know you're a class of 74 and 78, is that correct?
Right. It was one of the most enjoyable times I had. I loved the campus. I'd love to see what it looks like today with all of the new buildings, but and I served a stint on the Alumni Association Board of Directors, but I'll never forget when I went through the on-campus interviews with the Big Five, or then it was the Big Six CPA firms, and I met with the partners of, each of the firms, and at that time, people would say, Long Beach State, I didn't know they had an accountancy program. And I think I was one of the first, I was hired as one of the first alumni from Long Beach State at that PA firm. Nowadays, Long Beach State, the College of Business, and specifically the School of Accountancy, that just, it has a stellar reputation.
Oh, so in some ways, Wayne, you were a pioneer for accountancy alums.
Yeah, well, that was great. And it seems like everything happened. Well, it was like strange. That's, hence the title of, my wildest dreams. I never would have thought that I'd be the mayor of a city, let alone be on a radio show. I got my original degree. I graduated magna cum laude with a marketing degree.
Oh, congratulations.
But everyone was saying, no, accounting and finance, that's where the money is made. And actually what I did was I put off all of my required accounting and economics classes to the end, because everybody says those are hard. You don't want, wait till the very end. And by the time I got to the very end, that's when I found out what I really liked and what I wanted to be doing. So I went back and got the accounting degree.
Got it. So your undergrad was in marketing. And so from word of mouth and just experience, you ended up going back for, was it a master's in accounting, or did you
It
go
was
back
just
for?
a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
In fact, I thought about taking the additional courses to get the master's degree, but by then I was working at a CPA firm, putting in, like 80-hour work week.
Yeah. So you didn't need the particular title with the master's. I don't want to assume, because I know, again, you have such a fascinating bio. So maybe some people are here for radio, and maybe they want to learn tips on radio and being a mayor. But can you explain a CPA? What is a CPA and what do they do?
Well, it depends. If you're working at a CPA firm, you're mostly auditing companies. In my case, it was Fortune 500 companies, and you certify the accuracy of the financial statements, or at least the fairness of the financial statements. If you go into the private sector, which most public accountants do, and that's what I did as well. I was receiving offers by all of my clients, come be our controller and we'll pay you double what you're making. But there it's different. There you're in charge of typically the finance and accounting departments, and there you're actually producing accurate financial statements. And of course, the Wall Street people and investors are relying on the propriety of those statements as being accurate. Of course, we know that Enron and some other fraud proved otherwise, and then they made life difficult for auditors and CPAs.
Well, if your firm was on it, we could have prevented that whole shtick, maybe. Right. So CPA, certified public accountant. You mentioned that when you interviewed on campus, did you do any internships while you were at school? Did you have your foot in the door or anything like that?
No, back then, that really, well, I don't think I would have had the time because I was taking a full load. I had no experience other than the accounting degree. But in the field of accountancy, that's all that matters. You need to have the accounting degree and have the accounting background, and then you work your way up the ladder. Other fields, they require perhaps an internship, or they require, practical experience.
Okay, so for those maybe aspiring accountants that are with us today, you might not, the way that I just interpret that, maybe it's not dire for them to get an internship.
No, they say when you join a CPA firm and you need 2 years of CPA firm experience to get your CPA certificate, they somewhat call that an internship because you're not paid all that well. You work a lot of hours, you don't get paid overtime. And so, and that's when you learn the real world. In school, they teach you a lot of theory, but then you learn from the school of hard knocks, how to detect fraud, how to do an audit, how to bill a client, how to actually do a budget, for how much it's going to cost a client. So you really learn on the job, but you still have to have that accounting knowledge before you can actually even work in an accounting firm.
I was told by a CPA once that from about January to April, to the end of the tax filing season, they were like MIA with the rest of their life because they were working all the time. Is that any truth to that?
Well, actually, I should backtrack. In a CPA firm, there's people that go into the tax practice side, and then there's people in the auditing and financial side. I wasn't in the tax side, except a lot of my clients use the tax division. And one thing I did do early on in my career was I prepared tax returns on the side. But you're absolutely correct. That is a busy time for accounts.
Okay, so aspiring CPAs, just keep that in mind. Tax season, you may need to prioritize your CPA. We're getting a question from the chat, and again, I apologize. I'm in education, so I'm not as familiar with some of the terminology, but this question comes from the chat, and this has to do with, you mentioned you're a controller for one of your clients. And the question is, how did you walk that line representing the firm while also marketing yourself as that role? And I don't know, maybe you could explain what a controller does or is?
Right. Well, a controller is the person that effectively is the top person in an accounting department. So you have, like, accounting managers, and you have accounting staff, and the controller makes sure that the financial statements get produced in a timely fashion, that they're accurate. Every quarter, if you're an SEC, Securities and Exchange company, a Fortune 500, you got to do quarterly statements. And then at the end of the year, there's an annual audit. So it's basically making sure that the department runs smoothly and that everything is working.
Okay. Another question that's coming in, because you worked your way up through and you became a CFO, which is quite the starting from the bottom, working your way to the top kind of story. What qualities or skills do you think made a difference in your profession, in your personal growth, or what types of skills should aspiring CPAs be focused on?
Well, first and foremost, having a solid accounting background. But I think the marketing background was extremely helpful. From that, it's communication skills, and you have to also have great communication skills. If you're in a public accounting firm and you're meeting with clients, you have to, you have to be able to communicate, number one. You have to have good bedside manners. Oftentimes you're quoting, bids on getting the client. And so you have to be competitive. So there's a number of factors, but it's a lot of it is people skills. First, you have to have the basic accounting knowledge, but as in practically every profession, you have to be able to communicate and get along with people.
Yeah, we work with people after all, I suppose. For those who are trying to break into the Big Five, what advice, recommendations do you have, since you have a lot of experience in the big firms?
Well, now it's actually the Big Four. There was a merger, but I would say having outstanding grades. Apply yourself, study. You need to get as much accounting knowledge as you possibly can, because that's essential, whether you're working at a CPA firm or whether you're working in an accounting department, at a company. That's first and foremost. The second is networking. You never know who might know of a position. In fact, somebody came to me and said, hey, there's this position as the division controller at Universal Music Group, which was a prestigious position and would have offered me a lot more money. Well, it did. I actually interviewed and I got the job, and that wouldn't have happened if I didn't have a network of people. So the one thing that I would say, and this is not just for accounting, I would say in any profession, networking. And people say, well, but you can't network today because of COVID or whatever. And the answer is yes, you can. Obviously, you would do it through Zoom conferences, just like what we're doing now. But the more connections you have, plus if you ever have questions and you need the expertise and you want to run it by, someone that's in the profession, that's always great.
I wanted, you mentioned something about being offered another position. And I don't know exactly how to phrase this, but considering you being the controller and dealing with clients, how do you is that a conflict of interest in any way? Again, I don't know the exact terminology to phrase this because I'm just as an outsider thinking of CPA. How do you manage that line where you might be working for your firm, but also you're getting interest from a client? Is that?
Well, I think what the person was referring to is when you're in a public accounting firm and you have to be independent of the client. You know, you're auditing them, and so you don't do, you know, anything that jeopardizes that independence. When you're in the private practice sector, you know, you're working for a company, then that's not a significant thing. But for a CPA that's doing an audit, you know, they have to be independent of the client. Otherwise, when you give an opinion on the financial statements, it could be questionable as to whether you were unduly influenced.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to, I know that question came in through the chat, and I just thought it was a good opportunity to touch on that. Can you tell us about your experience as a CFO? How did that develop? And did you know that you were on that track?
Well, everyone aspires to be, you know, a CFO or a controller. And when I became the controller, and now I'm kind of dating myself a little, I mean, when I became a CFO, that was right around the time with Enron and WorldCom, where you couldn't turn on the TV and see a CFO doing the perp walk in handcuffs as a result of some fraud that was committed. And so when I was telling a number of friends that weren't in, you know, accounting, hey, I just got promoted, I'm a CFO. And the first time I did it, I got a weird look. I was thinking, well, what's up with that look? Well, it was, you know, even though in the industry, CFOs are highly regarded, outside of the accounting and finance world, people were seeing on TV how CFOs were going to prison or, you know, getting indicted. So,
got it. Yeah. So, no, that's hilarious. I don't want to again make you curious about age or anything, but I was younger when that happened. So that's the only experience I think many people might have had in terms of watching, like you mentioned, the CFOs getting taken away in cuffs. But clearly, you're a professional, a man of ethics. How long were you the CFO, and any other experiences that you want to share with having that title? It's a great responsibility.
Well, another one was, and we'll get to that one when I talk about when I ran for city council, but through the debates, I would say I'm a CFO. And one person asked me, what's a CFO? But I was a controller probably for about 5 or 6 years. And then I became a division CFO, one division of a company before I became a corporate CFO, and then ultimately, you know, the senior vice president. But that's a step up where now you're responsible for making sure that the company stays financially solvent. You're dealing with investors, you're dealing with bankers, and you're a little bit less removed from the day-to-day accounting tasks. That's, you know, that's what your controller is doing. So it was a little bit different from a culture standpoint, corporate culture standpoint. But I loved every minute of it. But I think I was a CFO probably for about, I don't know, 15 to 20 years out of my entire, you know, accounting and finance background.
Very impressive. And that, just FYI, that's Chief Financial Officer. For those who, I know accountancy, there's a lot of acronyms, and so we got to make sure that we're on the same page with that. So 15, 20 years leadership experience, you're heads of division. So clearly you develop leadership skills, and people look to you for guidance and leadership. And so not only in your professional life, but in your government, local government, how did that transition come about, or simultaneously with your professional career? How'd you get into politics?
Well, I was a long-time community volunteer. And in fact, I was the chair of the city's planning commission when a number of people came to me and said, we want you to run for city council. I'd never run for anything in my life. Well, actually, when I was in high school, I ran for student council, and it was a tie, and the principal flipped a coin and I lost. And I said, I'm never going to run for anything ever again in my life. But, I said, okay, that's something I'd love to do. And I had a lot of knowledge with the city. And I've always considered myself, people say you're a great politician. They mean it as a compliment. I say I'm not a politician. I hate politics. You just love giving back to our community. But what happened was I was an underdog. There were, I think, 7 candidates running, and it was the top 3 would get elected. And I was running against the incumbent mayor pro tem, which is like deputy mayor, the mayor's sister-in-law, and a number of other well-qualified candidates. And I thought, what on earth am I doing? This was a mistake. And once you get your name on the ballot, you can't get it off. So I said, okay, I'm going to have to go through with this. And to my surprise, and practically everyone's surprise, I won. So, and then 4 years later, I ran for re-election, and I won by a landslide. And in Manhattan Beach, there's the 2-term term limits. But while I was on the city council, I was appointed by the LA County Board of Supervisors to be on the Los Angeles County Beach Commission. And I served, 2 terms as mayor and 1 term on the commission as the chair. And in fact, my 2nd term as mayor, I was the mayor of the city of Manhattan Beach while I was the chair of the LA County Beach Commission. So.
Very nice. Does that include the great Dockweiler State Beach?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Beautiful beach. If you ever had the opportunity to go down there, Dockweiler, very iconic, very famous, beautiful, beautiful. A couple of things that you mentioned that I just want to highlight that you mentioned. This whole focus and energy came about as a volunteer. Right.
Well, I retired, and I said, I want to do something different, and that was actually, and I said, also, I have the experience, and I know I could do a great job representing our residents. But the one hurdle you have to get through first is you have to get elected. And I think that's where my marketing degree kicked in, because you have to sell yourself to voters. And it was my marketing experience from Long Beach State that was extraordinarily helpful.
Yeah. What was that transition like from private working in a firm, head honcho, to, like you mentioned, not just politics, but you're into the public arena where you're in service of people, community, constituents? What was that transition like from the private to the public?
Well, initially, not good. There was some contentious issue, and we voted, there's 5 council members. It was a unanimous decision. It was what I would call a no-brainer decision. And I can't remember what the issue was, but the very next day, that's when the nasty gram emails started up. And I'm saying to myself, what did I get myself into? Actually, I was forewarned. They said, don't get into politics, if you want to call it that, unless you have thick skin. And I didn't exactly have thick skin, but it got thicker every council meeting. And but then there were a lot of great things. My first term as mayor, it was our city's centennial, our 100th anniversary, and I presided in the centennial parade. And the most memorable, as you mentioned, or as was mentioned earlier, was I got to go into the White House, meet President Obama, and it was a nonpartisan, non-political, it was the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and the local newspaper did a story about how I met, Obama, and they had a photo. And then all of a sudden I got nasty emails from conservative Republicans saying,
Oh, geez.
what were you thinking? And I made sure when I was interviewed by the newspaper to say, be sure you say nonpartisan, non-political, because there was no politics involved. What we were doing was actually, I told the president, Mr. President, you only had like, I think 15 seconds to shake his hand and talk to him. I said, Mr. President, I'd like you to come to Manhattan Beach sometime. And he said, Wayne, he looked at my name tag and said, Wayne, I've flown over Marine One several times, and maybe one of these days I'll drop in.
Oh, that's so cool.
The guy was really tall. I've never been nervous in front of people or in front of crowds. But for the first time in my life, I think I'm almost speechless.
Well, president of the free world, it doesn't happen that often. One of the questions coming in the chat, what was your proudest moment as mayor of Manhattan Beach?
Well, the proudest moment, I think, was presiding, being the mayor during our year-long centennial celebrations. Also, we opened the new library. It's actually a county library, but it's right next to City Hall. And going through that ribbon cutting, there were a lot of ribbon cuttings when you're the mayor. So both my terms as mayor, I did a lot of ribbon cuttings. And
you must have golden scissors somewhere in your house, right?
Well, you know, in the scissors, usually the Chamber of Commerce has this huge scissors that, you know, is embellished, and we do a ribbon cutting. And one time I was kidding around. The scissors actually aren't sharp. They're made out of dull wood, and the ribbon pre-cut. But one time I took the scissors and put it over my neck like I was, and some photographer from one of the local papers actually published it with a humorous comment. And it was actually funny. I didn't mind. And, you know,
as mayor, you're a local celebrity. I can't believe the paparazzi was hounding you and caught you at a moment. Another question is coming in. People want to know, 100% volunteer as mayor, or did you get a stipend, or was there any sort of compensation for your service?
$500 a month, which doesn't even cover, you know, the costs. And there's a small mileage reimbursement because you're driving around, especially as the mayor. But that was another story. When my first term, I was a relatively new mayor, and there was some story about, I think, the mayor of Los Angeles at the time. But one of my constituents said, you ought to be ashamed of yourself, you know, a 6-figure salary and having a chauffeur and, you know, this, that, and the other. And when I explained what the salary actually was, and there's no limo or no chauffeur, you know, it's not like a big city mayor, you know, where it's a full-time, really paid position. But it was great. The city council gets emails from residents a lot, but the mayor gets a heck of a lot more than the council members. And it's usually when people like what you've done, or, you know, we've done something spectacular, you don't get all that many emails. It's when they don't like what you've done. Like, we were the first city to ban plastic bags.
Very cool.
They would find their way to the ocean, and it would affect the marine ecosystem. Plus, it would go into landfills. We were sued by the Plastic Bag Manufacturer Consortium, and we actually lost. The trial court judge ruled against the city. It was upheld by the California Court of Appeals, and it wasn't until the California Supreme Court, the whole issue was whether or not we had to do a full-blown environmental impact report, and we contended we didn't. And the California Supreme Court upheld that, and that became the landmark, and then every city and county would adopt similar ordinances.
So Wayne, I can say the next time I get my paper bag, or I get my 10-cent charge, I could thank Wayne Powell for my bag.
Or the city council. Well, actually, it was before I got elected that ordinance had been passed. Then fast forward, I get elected, and now we have to make a decision whether we want to appeal the decision, and we unanimously felt we should. Another similar situation was when we banned polystyrene, styrofoam cups, and then later utensils. And we also did a citywide ban on smoking. And so, most people liked it. Some people, well, with smoking, the smokers didn't like it. They would say, if I have a right to kill myself, then I can exercise that right. And this is America, and that's what our Constitution says we can do. And my response would always be, yes, but there's secondhand smoke, and people who don't want to exercise that should be free from secondhand smoke.
Well said, Wayne. Those are some great examples of the types of issues that you tackled as city council members. How did you, when you became mayor, did you have something on your mind, or how did you pick the issues to confront in your community?
Well, every mayor has a project or a theme, and mine was I Heart MB. And that was at a time when, obviously people remember the old I Heart New York or I Heart NY, but that was at a time when nobody was using that anymore. And so, but the whole thing was about giving back to the community. And I'm looking at this poster that I have, that I used to always have on an easel at city council chambers. And it says, people, places, and organizations that make Manhattan Beach the community we all love. And so that was my theme all throughout both terms as mayor. And, people loved it. It was all about everyone in the community making our city a better place. And it was a great, again, you have to be mayor to appreciate, what all you have to go through. But that was why I titled my presentation Wildest Dreams, because I would have never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be a mayor.
Yeah, very impressive. And I'm sure your marketing degree really helped with your campaign of I Heart Manhattan Beach.
Well, yeah, especially when you have an initiative that you have to sell to the residents. And oftentimes there's a lot of misinformation that's circulated, people usually that are in opposition to something. And of course, when you're running for elective office, you have to sell yourself and promote yourself. You also have to contend with some people that will say nasty things, untruthful things about you. And you have to set the record straight.
Were you mayor during the age of next door?
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm sure you have lots of tales about next door.
Well, when I first got onto Nextdoor, I was on Instagram and Facebook, and you have to kind of monitor social media. But it was a great social media platform, and you would learn about your neighbors and your community. But then somehow it evolved, or maybe I should say devolved, into, well, how can I say this civilly? Like a pissing match. And
devolved, I think, could be a slogan for next door if possible. We're not here to bash next door, but I'm just curious to know.
I mean, there's a lot of good stuff and a lot of great information, but as I tell people, you can never rely on what you see on social media, and because some people say, what, it's a vast wealth of information on the internet. And yes, it's true, but there's also some misinformation.
Sure. No, sorry, I just had to go. I just find it interesting. And as a city leader, I can't imagine checking social media. But you're mayor, you're like the local celebrity. People want to see you, hear from you. And how does that work out? Eventually, you're on radio. Is that how it came about?
Right. Well, as mayor, and whenever there's contentious issues, the local newspapers cover it. And if it, like in the case of the plastic bags or styrofoam or smoking, I would be interviewed by radio stations and TV stations. And one thing that I did was the city brought Broad Beach, actually not the city, Broad Beach, Malibu, tried to do an end around the city of Manhattan Beach and actually take 500,000 cubic yards of our offshore sand. And I found out about it on one of my beach commission meetings when I overheard someone say Manhattan Beach sand dredging project. Well, I led a campaign to make sure that that didn't happen, because that would have had a substantial adverse impact on our marine ecosystem, and then it would cause further erosion. And so I went public and I contacted all the TV reporters that had interviewed me in the past. And ultimately I was on the CBS This Morning network television show. And I don't make a habit of ever bashing anyone or any organization, because, you know, my thing was always about positive news and giving back to the community. But that was the one exception where I shamed them. And the city attorney for the city of Malibu, who actually was a Manhattan Beach resident, came to me and says, if you agree, and there was a long written agreement, if you agree to back off, we will drop our request with the State Lands Commission with prejudice, meaning they could never refile. And so it all worked out. But people who turned on the TV and saw me, you know, I was interviewed one day and then it aired the next morning. And people who saw me on TV said, Wayne, I can't believe you were on network news. And that was one time when I got a gazillion attaboy emails. There was not one negative email. But as a result, I was interviewed on the Healthy Life Radio Network. So after it aired, maybe about a few months afterwards, I was offered the job to be a radio host, and it'd be Powell to the People on the Healthy Life Radio Network. And I thought that was a joke because, you know, I didn't have a radio voice and I didn't know all that much about being an on-air personality. But I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. And now 5 years later, I enjoy it. I enjoy every minute of it.
Yeah, Powell to the People, great marketing. I think that's brilliant. Tell us about Powell to the People. When, how often does it air? Where can we find it?
On the East Coast and Midwest, it's on you know, some AM and FM radio stations, but it's mostly internet. That's the wave of the future. You know, radio stations are now streaming online, and at some point down the road, it'll be all that way. But if you go to healthylife.net, or if you go to my website, waynepowell.net, I have links. And on my website, I have an entire archive of all my shows. And sometimes I don't have a guest when there's like an issue that I want to delve into in detail, but it's all positive news. I guess there are some exceptions. When COVID hit, you know, about a year ago, I had a couple of back-to-back shows which were informational in nature, where I would give references for, you know, reputable websites. You know, talk about misinformation on the internet. There was all kinds of misinformation about COVID, and I said, here's the website to the County Department of Health, you know, the CDC, all of the various reliable sources. And then I had an epidemiologist on my show that talked at a level, down at a level that, you know, the average person can understand. And those were some of my highest rated shows.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, that was certainly a frontier where people were digging for information. Any advice for those who might aspire to get into that medium, whether that's working, maybe behind the scenes or on air? Any general advice for those aspiring?
Well, if you want to be in radio or television, whether it's in front of the mic or camera or behind the mic, like as a producer or you know, a writer or a director, I would highly recommend you know, Cal State Long Beach, the School of Radio and TV, you know, journalism. it's kind of interesting. My first year doing the radio show, I learned a number of things. And one of them was, one of my early on guests was the executive producer of Modern Family. And I was trying, he's a Manhattan Beach resident. I was trying to get him on my show, and he was always way too busy. So finally, I saw him at our annual Pier Fireworks, Manhattan Beach Fireworks show. And I said, when are you, his name's Danny Zucker. He said, hey, Danny, when are you going to be on my radio show? What do I have to do? And he said, how about if I call from the set, because they were in production. Well, normally I don't like people calling in from a cell phone because sometimes you have dropped calls or, the sound may not be that great. But you could hear in the background all of the things going on. And at one point, Ed O'Neill, who played the father on that, also the father in Married with Children, he goes, Danny, who the heck have you been on the phone with for almost an hour now? Well, he used some other colorful word that I won't repeat. And got into the next commercial. I got yelled at by the executive producer. It wasn't my fault. And, for my guests, I have a list of rules and whatever. And I never thought that I should have, no colorful language or profanity. But that was actually, I think, my highest rated show. And it was interesting. The ratings spiked up throughout the show because presumably people were texting and emailing saying, you got to tune into the show. The guy's hilarious, not me, Danny.
Wayne, we only have a few minutes left, and there's just a couple more questions, and maybe we could do a little rapid fire. Advice for students, alums starting out, achieving their dreams, as someone who has done a lot. General advice.
Well, my mom got her teaching degree and master's degree from Long Beach State, and she always said, reach for your dreams, work hard, and you will achieve them. And my advice would be get as much, apply yourself as much as you can while you're in college, learn as much as you can, and work hard. And some things may get handed to you, like the radio job in my case. Other things you have to work for, like getting elected or working my way up the corporate ladder. But again, it's work hard, and that you'll accomplish things.
Well said, well said. And then we'll end on this one. It comes from our guests. What is next for Wayne?
Well, right now I'm happy with the radio show. I also serve on a number of local nonprofit board of directors, and I love giving back to the community. And unless something bizarre, which is another wild dream, comes upon me, who knows? I always keep an open mind, and I'm always up to various challenges. So I guess we'll have to see about that.
That's awesome, Wayne, and working hard, certainly, but I can stress personally how much I really enjoy you hearing about volunteering and putting yourself out there to volunteer. And it sounds like you really worked hard to put yourselves in positions where those doors did open for you. And Wayne,
and one thing I want to mention real quickly,
please.
Sometimes you won't achieve, the door will be closed or it'll be slammed. And that is just an opportunity, and keep trying, because that's happened to me throughout my career. But eventually persistence will pay off. So if first you don't meet with success, keep on trying.
Wayne, very well said. I'll let those be the final words for our conversation. Wayne, thank you so much for taking some time to shed light on your career in accountancy, but also shedding some light and information about city government. I think lots of people may have had misconceptions, certainly I did, about exactly the role of city leaders. Yeah. And certainly we'll check out, could you say this maybe one more time? Where can we find your show?
Healthylife.net, or you could do WaynePowell.net, and go Beat.
Go Beat. Absolutely. Wayne, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Christopher, for a very engaging conversation. Wayne, before we go, if any of our students or alumni on the call would like to connect with you, we definitely encourage them to reach out to you through your website. But are you on LinkedIn as well, that they could possibly follow you as well?
Yes, yes, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and primarily Facebook is what I monitor a lot. But yeah, they can also do LinkedIn.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you again for sharing your path. You definitely accomplished many things, and we thank you for your time. Thank you everyone for attending. We encourage you to follow us on social media to learn about our future chats and to learn about our other programming. Visit our website. Thank you.